appreciate the Sterling Society support, specifically Sarah and John Kissinger, who funded this. But now we have Ted Wray, who's fascinating. Anybody who can take Vantage books and put them in magic, it's amazing, the 3D world. I read his CD, it's all true. It's on his website. Go look, it's amazing. He had a career both in printing, music, art, earning him multiple awards in the pursuit of excellence in his career. In 2019, he reinvented himself to have the most innovative book excavation artist. He's earned various awards and exhibits in New York, Rhode Island, Maryland, Georgia, and Florida. In 2021, his month-long solo career, don't judge a book by its Carver. He has 50 of these works. So he has 200 works of book excavation art, over 70 which are in private collections across the United States and Canada. He lives and works now in St. Petersburg, really all considered Dunedin. He's represented by the Brenda McMahon Gallery. Please enjoy Ted.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cassie, for your technical help. Thank you, Dion, for your technical help. Thank you, I know her name, Dina, for the invitation to come speak today. How y'all doing today? Doing okay?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. If you can't hear me, let me know. I will use a microphone. I will do my best to project without one. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm a book sculptor, and there are many varieties of book sculpture. My book sculpture, and I didn't invent this term, book excavation art refers to the fact that I only remove things from the book. I'm not adding and I'm not folding. So when you hear the term book excavation art, that's in reference to the fact that I'm only removing things. When I was in high school, I had a very troubled childhood. I escaped into books and art all my life. When I was in high school, I used to come up with this motif. This is actually a checkerboard. I couldn't draw a straight line. So these checkerboard motifs were a big part of my work in high school. When I was a freshman, I went to an alternative high school. Like I said, I had a very troubled childhood. And I went to a high school, it was an alternative high school, and they basically rescued children who would have otherwise dropped out and become derelicts. And that was certainly not the case with me. When I was a freshman, a senior in that school saw my work and gifted me The Infinite World of M.C. Escher. And that changed my world. I was already into sort of multi-dimensional visuals, but Escher changed my world. Here's just a quick look at some of the stuff I used to draw before art school in high school. At age 15, when I was 15, my brother was 19. He was working as a production operator at Xerox Business Services in Armonk, New York. And in order to keep me out of trouble, he asked if I could come and do a temporary job. They hired temps to do all the manual labor. And they said, well, you're hiring these people all the time. Let's get my brother here. He'll, be consistent. And so when I was 15, by avoiding being on a temporary payroll, I got on Xerox payroll at age 15. It was temporary. At age 18, when I graduated high school, I came onto Xerox full-time. At age 20, I was the youngest vested employee at Xerox. My earliest tasks at Xerox gave me a lot of lessons. The very first one, my first day on the job, I had to collate tabs. Does anyone know what that means? Stacks of paper. There were thousands of these pages. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. And I had to put them in order, one by one. So I actually quickly learned, well, if I'm stuck doing this, I might as well try to enjoy it. And I quickly learned that doing monotonous work doesn't need to feel monotonous. Rather than calling it tedious, it can be meticulous. So I became very aware that, chopping wood, building things with pebbles eventually those pebbles will add up. So that gave me the discipline to work in again, ways that people might call monotonous. That gave me opportunities within Xerox. I was pretty good at what I did, so I stayed with Xerox for a while, became reliable, and I'll talk about some opportunities that got me into book publishing that it was totally unforeseeable how that would play into my present life. Around this time, I was going to art school, and I'll touch base on it. I'll show you some examples of my cartoons. Do you remember Gary Larson, the first time? I loved Gary Larson, and he retired in the 1990s. I was going to be the next Gary Larson. And I was in the corporate world. Who was the most popular cartoonist after Gary Larson? That was before. After. Dilbert. I hated Dilbert. I was in the corporate world. The jokes were just so obvious and not funny. But we'll get into that. So I was going to be the next Gary Larson. So these are some of the early, as soon as I was exposed to Salvador Dali, well, like I said, when I was a child, I was troubled. My first encounter with Salvador Dali, I was on LSD. Is anyone familiar with his painting called Metamorphosis of Narcissus?
Yes.
It's still my favorite painting to this day. It's the brilliant one that has an image of the mythological Narcissus looking at his reflection in the water, and right next to him is an image of a hand holding an egg, and the images are the identical shape. Now they're physically impossible, but they look brilliant. So this is just sort of obviously very Dali-esque on the left there. Just a quick look at some of the really unusual stuff I was doing as a child. I turned this into a greeting card one year, and my family thought I was crazy. Again, my preoccupation with books. This was a chessboard that was liquid. The book was liquid, and I was going to have a scene, early sketches, childhood stuff. So just quick looks at these drawings got me into art school. My thinking was that they thought, we can't have him doing this forever. This is me at age, I don't know, 18 or 19 in the early 1990s. This gentleman, pioneer of, I was involved in a research and development project with Xerox. This was at the dawn of desktop publishing, when documents were becoming digitized. If you look at Xerox history, they say it was 1994, but I left Xerox before 94. When I was there, they were branding themselves within as the document company, because they were no longer, copiers were going to be irrelevant soon, and they knew it. So they changed their brand to the document company. And the logo was the first document, which was, I believe it was a woman's hand on a cave. The image of a woman's hand on a cave. And that got me fascinated with documents in general. You know, we went from hands on the caves to carved stone to scrolls, you know, from scrolls to what's called a codex, which is a folded scroll, which led to books. I'm very much about the material these days. Forgive my talk if it's not linear. I'm going to try to keep it linear. Things are going to bounce around a lot because so many stars in the constellation of my story come into play in really surprising and unpredictable ways. This was my attempt at what would Salvador Dali do what would the child of Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso do? This was my sort of attempt, black and white sketch. When I was in art school, I got really into watercolor and pastels also. Around this time was drilled into my psyche to develop your own artistic style. While working for Xerox and going to art school, I was being commissioned portrait work. And I was doing decent portraits, but there was nothing unique about them, you know, and I wanted to have a voice in the art world. And at that age, I really didn't like getting advice from non-artists. I didn't even like getting advice from artists. But the idea you have to develop your own style, I understood it, I didn't like it, I didn't know what to do with it yet, but this was sort of my aim in that direction. This is really zoomed in. This is some of my pastel work. It's a terrible photo, but it's a quick image of my dad. I did that in like 5 minutes of my dad. Very proud of it, but I wish I had a better image. And this was a pastel painting of a photograph of my cat. I was learning more in art school about Rembrandt, etc. And I just love the lighting, how the cats just merge with the shadows. And in the original photo, you can see his eye and her ear is there in a very, very dark, just subtle ink. Maybe you can see it. And some more sketches, pastels. So here are some of my art. I was going to be the next Gary Larson. I've always been an alternative sort of thinker. You know, I take words like fall, and well, it means more than one thing. I've developed the Humpty Dumpty theme where he's playing football, he's at a Thanksgiving Day parade, he's having a great fall. And, you know, the idea of an engagement ring on a worm. Technology was developing. This was perhaps a little risque. And these were just gag sketches. They're not final cartoons. They were just getting the idea out. And like I said, sadly, Dilbert took over before, and I was not delighted with the idea of trying to compete with such a popular cartoonist. In my late 20s, I started going to open mic nights. I also played guitar at this time. I was a hobbyist guitarist. And then open mics, people would hear my performance and they say, "You should quit your day job." And I thought, what? There were so many venues around Tampa Bay to perform at, and they were like, "You're way better than half the guys." And I shouldn't say that to brag, but it was a dream of mine at the time. And so in June of '99, I quit my day job, became a full-time entertainer. In 2022, Weekly Planet, now it's Creative Loafing, same publisher, changed their brand, but I won the Best of the Day in the Reader's Poll in 2022. That career lasted from 1999 to 2019, pre-COVID. I got into it as a songwriter. I've always been very inspired by geniuses like Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Paul Simon in particular, really crafted songs. And I work with language when I'm writing in similar fashions. I'm also a self-taught guitarist. And at some point someone said, "You're self-taught on guitar, here's a harmonica, teach yourself." So I was a solo artist all around Tampa Bay for 20 years. I got into it as a songwriter, but my career shifted into an entertainer. I quit drinking in 2013. It was a great social lubricant, but I wasn't getting into trouble per se, except maybe with some particular women. But I had gotten to the point where a lot of my career was behind me. I didn't feel like I had much to show for it, because I was getting paid for performance. Though I recorded music, I wasn't delighted with, as a solo artist, I didn't have teams of other trusted ears on the job recording. So I never published my original music, at least not officially. Anyway, I decided in 2013 I was meant for something more than merely performing. When the gig was over, everyone went home and there was nothing left behind as a result of all my labors. So I decided that I wanted to do something more enduring. So I quit drinking in 2013. I continued making music another 5 years. I was also dealing with a hand injury and I was playing through the pain for years. In 2014, I asked the universe, I said a prayer, and it was something like, "I know you've given me creative gifts. I'm trying to honor them, I'm really doing my best, but this isn't working. If you give me a new idea, something new, as outrageous as it seems, I will pursue it if it feels like it's a response to this prayer." A little while later, that very day, I went to bed. It was midday. I was depressed. And while I'm lying in bed, the imagery of some book sculptors I was already familiar with entered my mind. And I was lying there, I thought, what could I do differently than what they're already doing? There were I'd seen the work of a lot of book sculptors. Again, I love books, I love art, all mediums. And with my history in the printing industry, working with paper, I also fell in love with paper in strange ways when I was in the printing industry. I was lying there wondering what can I bring differently to this medium, and the notion arrived at me, stop dreaming, start cutting. That very day, I had just arrived home with a box of books from the used bookstore that I tried to sell them or give them, and they said, there's no market for this stuff, I can't sell these books. So I had a box of books that had no market value, so I didn't feel, I had books that I had freedom, permission to not feel guilty to recycle in unusual ways. I spent hours and hours and hours cutting books for years before my particular style emerged. This was one of my earliest works, way different than what I'm doing now. Very similar to what, if you Google book sculpture, you'll see a lot of this stuff where they're bending the pages. And basically what I did with this book was I bent every other page, and then every other page I carved a coin, a circular coin, and that was on the edges of all the books. Do I call it art? Not particularly, but it was one of the early experiences that made me realize something really cool can be done with books. This, by the way, is, if it's still there, it may not be, is on the wall at the book swap in Palm Harbor, US 19 and Tampa Road. So after years of cutting and wondering why am I cutting, and my inner voice responding, because you said you would, this emerged, and this one is actually right here. It's titled First of Its Kind, and what happened as I was cutting was when I went to move it, the paperback book bent in my hands, and as it bent, the depth revealed itself in ways that I hadn't seen before, and it reminded me of when I used to write songs and just a chorus. I look at creativity like I am an antenna. I'm open, delivered, I'm willing to do something with the goods. And as long as I honor the creative impulse, I'm rewarded with new ideas all the time. I forget how to connect those dots now. I just lost my train of thought. So anyway, when this emerged, this bend in the book, I knew I was, the songwriting. It was like a chorus would arrive when I was writing songs, and I was like, thank you, it was a brilliant chorus. And choruses usually write the rest of the song. When you come up with a good chorus, the verses will write themselves. It was a similar thing. When it revealed itself to me, I knew I was onto something. But then I had to engineer, how do I bend the book? And I can't sell you my hands holding the book bent, right? I had to come up with a solution to, if you wanted to buy the art, you wanted to hang it on your wall today. So I had to come up with a solution for that. I'll get to that also. This is one of my early works. It was a book called Photo Mosaics by a guy named Robert Silvers. My early process, again, nobody was doing this stuff. I couldn't take lessons. It was all, I'm an outsider artist in that sense, even though I'm an educated in the arts and I know how to paint and draw. This is a medium that there's no lessons for this stuff. But I looked at the titles, Robert Silver's name was across the top. Photo Mosaics was across the bottom, and I thought, what letters do they have in common? And it's spelled Otsis. I have no idea. I Google Otsis, and it actually is some sort of, somebody's doing something with that name. But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting part of my process of coming up with, what do I do with this stuff now that I have it? So I was inventing problems that never existed before. I eventually, in order to get the book bent like that, my first solution was to wrap it around a piece of PVC. In this case, I put some bubble wrap around the PVC to make it wider. And again, this is the same artwork, the first of its kind. I would strap the book to the PVC and glue the edges. And then when it dried, I would glue the space between. Then when the glue dried, I would open it up, and now it's bent in that posture. So I come up with a solution. Another problem that I invented without knowing it, because no one was teaching this stuff, this image, I was very proud of this particular book sculpture, another very early one of mine. However, this strip of paper is so thin, and there's so much more weight on the image of the woman that it's all contorted and bent out of shape. I know how to repair it now. I haven't repaired it yet, but that was another. This art form, I've learned how not to make mistakes by making those mistakes. This is also the first book that has what I'm calling a bloom. There's no language for this stuff. I'm calling it a bloom. What I would do is when I would find more exciting color on the back of the page, I would cut 3 margins and fold it outward. So whenever you see what I call a bloom, again, that was already in the book when I started. I'm not adding anything to the material. So these are folded out, and then once I'm finished sculpting the interior, I carve the exterior in whatever motif sort of shows up as I'm working. This was another problem. I was really proud of the idea. There was an image of a typewriter on the cover of the book, and I found this page later that fit perfectly, and I bent it and fit through into the typewriter. But when I bend the book, it shifts in such a way I couldn't use it. I'm about to share with you something that's called found poetry. And what that is I take paragraphs as they exist, and I remove words and change the meaning of those sentences. So this reads, around the world, ideas can be enjoyed. The more you practice, the more you enjoy your ability. Read and become an expert. It spoke very much to the work that I was doing at the time and the fact that I wrote books. Okay, so here's the book I showed you, my early solution for how to get the book bent and increase the depth. As I was working this process, I thought, how can I add even more depth? And eventually, after carving many books, I started inserting temporary spacers, just blank pages, between every page so it would increase the depth of the book before bending it and gluing it. So this is an example of me flipping through a recent book that I carved. That's what it looks like when I'm done, and now I'm inserting the temporary spacers. Then it's going to skip the process of the bending and gluing and show you how the book is revealed one page at a time. This one, unfortunately this video won't play, but I was just informed this morning that this book sculpture sold. I'm represented by Brenda McMahon Gallery down in Gulfport, and it's been a wonderful experience. I was a solo show there in November, and it's been just a wonderful experience since. Inventing more problems that never existed before. At a certain point, I started cutting both the front cover and the back cover. That wasn't problematic enough. I had to then take the centerfold. This is the same book. This is the interior of the book. So the left and the right side of the interior of the book. This was before I came up with my elegant solution that I employ today. This was me bending the book. This is on a music stand because as I'm bending and gluing each quarter of this particular book, so this is a 360-degree diptych, right? 4 panels, but 2 at a time, 2 from each view. So this is just showing you how unelegant my original solution was. This is another really ugly version of how I used to glue them before my current solution. This is a very deep book. That's after it's bent and glued. And since this was a diptych, I had to bend and glue the other side. I didn't yet know how to do it safely without putting it on some sort of way to let it hang, so as I'm working, setting this side up, I'm not flattening what I've already glued. This is my elegant solution. Eventually, clamp it down. Again, this was a solution I couldn't Google. So, since this book, people ask me about the colors in my work and the types of books I use. This, and you'll see the final result, this book was an atlas of the American Civil War. Very monochromatic, very black, just black and white mostly. So in order to, you saw the reveal video, that became part of my demonstration. As I'm revealing the work, it struck me, why am I not recording this? This is a great way to demonstrate, to show you more about my work. So in this case, I added brown craft paper between each page. This way, when the book is revealed, there's more contrast for the reveal. So that's the book as it's being glued. This is the bound edge of the book. I bent it after I inserted the spacers, and I glue the unbound edge, which in printing jargon is the foredge of the book. How do you safely transport this stuff? I regret that I don't have any hardcovers here. These days I'm mostly working on hardcovers. I had a box in my truck today and I removed the wrong box, and I wanted to have a few of the tables here for you. But when I had my solo show in Georgia, don't judge a book by its Carver, I hadn't yet come up with a solution. This was like, how do I get it from the house to the gallery, right? And this is embarrassing and not a long-term solution. I have to include this. Once this was published, this article in that newspaper, I got solicited by a company that said, hey, can we take the newspaper article, cut it up and frame it for you? Do you see what I'm doing? So they wanted to cut a book and frame it and charge me to do that. So I had to include that reminder. Okay, so here is my elegant solution for how to ship, store, safely protect my hardcovers. This is about the third or fourth iteration. I spent, again, this was a solution nobody had for me, I had to come up with. So I custom built a slipcase for every single hardcover. And it easily, I had to make it foolproof, so it easily slips into the book, and then the inner scaffolding holds it. And as I'm pressing down there, it shows that they're protected. They're protected from the exterior, and it won't collapse on itself. And this is just a quick demo of building the particular slipcase. The video seems much faster. So that's again the interior, what I'm calling it scaffolding, because I don't know what else to call it. But that's, and this is just another example. It's really easy. You know, I shipped this particular work to a collector in Texas, and I have a video of him opening it, and it's just, you know, just really simple. And it's made out of heavy-duty cardboard, not quite as heavy-duty as some of the hardcover books, although I am using hardcover books these days to build the slipcases also. Here are some examples of my work that I meant to have here. I'm glad that the video is actually able to show you. I have a variety of genres. I have abstract, I have surreal. This was a book on surgery. Which is a pretty common motif for book surgeons. This one is available at Brenda McMahon. This one was in a show in New York City last year. So, okay, so now I mentioned found poetry. I call them corrupted paragraphs. Obviously, that sentence was not in the book. I bring a lot of humor to my work. I also wrote, when I was a songwriter, it was very popular locally, I wrote a very naughty song about candy. It was called Sweet Tooth. So a lot of people are familiar with my play on the candy. Here are a few more examples. Once I was alone, quiet fed my soul. I know the darkness too. You know, sometimes art is disturbing and dark, depending on the interior of the artist's psyche. Life relies on spontaneous action of energy coming from you. You have to learn to solve the problem in terms of relative comparison, but the pressures are great. Very convoluted sentence, grammatically correct, but fun. You have to be accurate. The pressures are great. You have to be accurate with still more flexibility. Work the good. You can make some changes again. Images give us hard evidence the world actually looked like a tiny flat disk with Babylon at the center. So some of my work really has a lot of humor. This book, I had to remove a page that I spent hours cutting in detail because it was blocking Bring Home the Sensational Water Torture. Bring Home was on one page, the Sensational Water Torture was on another page. And I liked the way that they blended well. And the whole theme of this particular work has a very circusy feel, so that felt right. And then again, meaning might be entirely in question. Those words, yes, they were in that order, but there were other words building context around them. So I changed the meaning. Again, humor. The chubby boy is not impressed. While we see a man in the center wearing dopey artifacts, making a wacky kind of art. Now it gets dark. The mothers of ruined strangers of New York during the Great Depression tried to freeze small kids. We know that many such horrible deaths, heads wedged into sunken milk cans or impaled on spears, epitomize the carefree pleasures of a summer's day or a game of softball. And then this is in one of my works, speaks directly to my work. Process of rethinking humble sculptures. I reinvent my work every day. So here's a demonstration. This is the Civil War Atlas. The book is now called Contour. This is just demonstrating the texture before the book is set and glued, really showing you how finely detailed, how tight the cuts are. Now I'm flipping through page by page to show you each page. Now 2 cameras, so you see the front of the book, the back of the pages, front and back. Now I'm inserting the craft paper. That's what it looks like before I bend and glue it. And this is what it looks like sped up, revealed, and that's the result.
Wow.
Would you guys like to see a demonstration of the reveal?
Yes.
So this is kind of what it looks like before I... Yeah, if someone wants to turn the lights on. Is Dion around? There's a variety of options. Now, it's going to take me a moment. If anyone wants to photograph it, I should have mentioned this sooner. Photography is welcome, encouraged. Sharing is also welcome and encouraged. If somebody wants to photograph this as it happens, feel free. I'm going to record it on my old phone here. I'm taping it to the table. How are we for time? Okay, this is perfect. I'm going to finish this up and then I will open it up to questions. So this is probably going to take just a few minutes to do the complete reveal. There are probably 60 pages being revealed one at a time. And the reason I'm taping it to the table is because filming it, I want to keep the book as still as possible. And sometimes these, what I call slip sheets, are so tight in the book that it will wobble or move, and I don't want to have to deal with that editing the video. You people are great, by the way. I'm just really enjoying myself, and thank you for putting up with me. Okay, so this is my improvised, again, I create solutions that never existed. It's my improvised camera easel. Zoomed in close enough, almost square. If anyone wants to come closer, feel free. Just be careful what's blocked by your lines. There will be some aha moments. If you're compelled to gasp, feel free. So far, nothing fancy. This is unusual because I usually see it as I'm doing it. I'm trying to figure out where to stand so I can see it. I'll just wait till I hear you gasp at some an interesting reveal. So everything you see was already in the book when I started. I haven't
started cutting.
Added anything.
Images you're going to start with.
Feel free to move around if you want a better view, please.
So there'll be more detail coming towards the center.
So it's as if he's cutting out those parts.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what he was waiting for.
Okay, you
Again,
can do
those
it now. Move.
circles were already in the book. I cut them by
You can take his
hand.
camera
I
out.
used to trace circles like a stencil with the blade, but I've done so much of this work now that I trust my hand and my eyes to do it without tracing. I'm so used to doing this from the front that this is happening a little more slowly than usual. So thank you for your patience.
It's okay. No, it's. Wow.
Should I slow down? Build suspense?
Perfect. Good pace.
So eventually you see that I'm going to run out of space to cut, right? The image space that I'm cutting is getting smaller and smaller. This was a book of the Savannah College of Arts and Design, so SCAD. This was their course catalog for whatever year. And I selected this. I was living in Georgia at the time, and I found it in a thrift store. I selected it for its colors. Every work I do is its own unique composition, which is totally contingent, as I've said, on the contents of the book. So I'm thinking about calling this one Boss Lady.
Do you start cutting from the front of the book to the back?
Yes, I've tried cutting from the back to the front, but as soon as I say I'm cutting page 101, and I turn the page, 99 is now blocking 101, and I can't see through it. So I generally start intuitively with a motif, a design intuitively from the cover or early pages, and I work with that motif until something interesting reveals itself to me. Oh, this is pretty good. This part of my process is much like a ceramicist who puts their work in the kiln not knowing exactly what the result will be. And even at this point, like I said, normally I have a view of these pages being revealed. I'm sacrificing my view for yours. Nearly done. I don't know if anyone's been counting, there's probably about 60 cut sheets.
I've got a question.
I'm all ears.
We left an email list, and I wonder if you would use that email list to let us know when you have the next show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have my own email list, and I'd love to get your emails, get you on my email list. I don't send out too much, maybe once a month. I'm currently represented at Brenda McMahon Gallery in Gulfport. I have QR codes that will lead you to my website. My website is Ted Wray Artist, Ray with a W, like Faye Ray, TedRayArtist.com. And I have an Instagram at Ted Wray Artist. And my Instagram has a lot of these videos, the videos that I did of the reveal,
By the way,
the spins. Stop it. Thank you very much. So this is my first view of it in 3D, and I'm pretty pleased with it. You know, the cuts are so narrow and so tight that from afar it almost looks gray, but close up the colors are very vivid.
yeah, it's very vivid.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, sweetie. I didn't even know I was in your. You should have hit me.
Would you like to take some questions while you're
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. Just shout them out.
So are you thinking three-dimensional when you're expanding the idea to make your cuts? I mean, do you know what that's like, or is the process and reveal itself as you're working?
There are elements of it that I know how to manipulate now. You know, early on in my quest doing this stuff, it was all intuitive. It was all, I had to see what would happen if I tried this. And now there are elements of my work that I can sort of anticipate. I have a general idea how this is going to work. You know, there are several motifs that I use. You saw when the circles emerged and when the boss lady emerged. They were isolated images. They weren't part of the pattern. That becomes a totally different process, totally different technique that I use when I'm working in general. Many of my abstracts are merely patterns. My work is being developed. I mean, there's no sketchbook for this stuff. I can't exactly, you know, every new experiment is an investment in, it's a commitment, so I have to make sure that it's going to be worthwhile. I don't know how well you can see this now, but this one I showed earlier is the pattern. You know, I used to work with a fire motif where all the edges were pointed. Now I've rounded them, but this spiral motif appears in a lot of my work. I don't know if that exactly answered your question.
About the binding on with the original book, before you deconstruct it, do you have a particular binding you're looking for, or you never, binding is not a variable in the equation?
Do you know much about binding?
Well,
I prefer
I
Smith.
taught all three books for years.
Okay, well I prefer Smith sewn because they're durable, right? This book was glued,
Yes,
so
that's what I'm wondering.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of that because if I lay it flat, it's glued, I'm risking it falling apart.
That's what I'm wondering.
Where a Smith sewn book is like, you know, crafted for durability. So I work with materials that are, a lot of them are more fragile than others. I wish I had photos of this with me, but you can see them on my Instagram. I took the logo for National Geographic, and Geographic was below, right? So I turned the G into a C, got rid of the E, kept the O, kept the R, so and then National. Basically, I took the word National Geographic logo and turned it into Corona. So I had done a whole series in National Geographic, and there were so many pharmaceutical ads in National Geographic magazine that gave me a lot of material that was relevant to that time.
Have you ever considered using a chapter book and then creating a 3D picture inside of it? So like cutting around it to make it look like something's coming out. So from the
I haven't added anything to books yet. One of the brainstorms, ideas are arriving at me all the time. I have the notion of using larger books to be the shadow box for smaller books. I have ideas about combining books. I've done a few books where I've combined them. The smallest book I ever did, again, it's on my social media platforms. It was a diptych, but it was very small. And I installed it hardcover. I cut a window into an encyclopedia, a very old, elegant encyclopedia. And I installed the new, smaller book sculpture into the encyclopedia and closed it so the book, it stands alone. It's pretty wild. And the book is popping out. Normally, when I do my work, the front cover is flat, and so it's concave. Now and then I'll do them convex, where the images will be popping outward. And where I installed the small one into the encyclopedia, that's the case.
Part of your structure within your mind is that you do not change the color. The color has to be from the book.
Yeah,
You do not
I'm a book excavation purist.
That's what
The tools that you're using, are you using an X-Acto knife, or how many blades do you have to use to complete?
I have a demo of me putting a chainsaw to books. I have a demo of me throwing it in the lawn and putting a weed trimmer to it. But they're all gags. These were fun videos. I use an X-Acto knife. And there are a variety of manufacturers for blades, and they're not all the same. I kind of semi-endorsed by Excel Blades. They're excellent quality manufacturer from New Jersey. They make excellent blades.
I must say, you must be very patient.
Well, I'm stuck with me. The way I look at it, we share the world, right? And if I can't be patient with me, how can I be patient with you? It's very easy. You know, when I know the result, earlier when I talked about my binding experience in the printing industry, working with monotonous work, you know, it's like, well, I'm stuck here doing this work. I might as well try to get it done. I might as well try to enjoy it. And then the Buddhist in me says something like, if you're stuck with it, learn to enjoy it. Learn to make a game of it. It is meditative. I really enjoy being meticulous in detail. Sir?
When you do your common poetry, do you go through the book and look at the pages and pencil, or does it hit you when you get to a certain page?
As I'm working, you know, some pages will just be imagery, and some pages will be text, or both. When I get to a large block of text, I'll change my glasses, put on my reading glasses as opposed to my working glasses, and I'll sit there looking at these paragraphs and saying, how can I make this into one crazy, convoluted sentence that makes no sense? I don't preview the books in advance that way. Now and then, it really strikes me, if I'm working on a theme where I don't want the text, I'll just cut that page out completely. Other times, it depends on, if I don't know where this work is going, that may inform the theme that the book takes from then on. It's very spontaneous.
The gluing of the pages, is that mostly at the edge?
Yes, when I'm done, I use an archival glue, so it'll never color, miscolor, or damage. And let's see if, so, yeah. This is, like I said, this is the bound edge of the book. This is the book folded, or bent. And then this is the unbound edge of the book. So the only glue on this book is on the forward edge of the book, the unbound edge. And in this case, this is a semi-hard cover. I did a repair job, so I just treated it with a soft cover and glued the whole thing together. But yes, that's the only glue I put into it. Soft covers, paperbacks, these will all be installed in shadow boxes. The hard covers can be installed in shadow boxes. Generally, they're pedestal works, and they have a display case. Ultimately, you know, some people have insisted that I do. but I don't sell soft covers unprotected. You know, at first I said, you know, to protect them from dust and the fingers of children. And I've had a lot of adults say, what do you mean just children? I want to touch this thing. So and I understand that. I mean, I get to touch it because I'm working with it. But I know they're very inviting for the hands.
So I missed, like with the Civil War book, when you put the pages, the color pages in between, do you glue those in, or is that just a temporary?
No, just like the pages I removed here, those are just temporary. Now and then I glue them in accidentally because they're too big and the edge, they get in there. And then I use a scalpel because it's a thin blade, you know, it's a thin handle and the blade is curved. So I can pretty much blindly go down and cut the glue. If I put this, what I call slip sheets, too close to the margin or use too much glue, they get stuck now and then. I have some blooper reels of my work where I'm doing the reveal and it gets stuck. And sometimes I do have a video of me solving the problem with the scalpel.
And does that help isolate the image then as you're working on it, having the piece be connected?
No, I don't add the slip sheets, the temporary spacers, until the book is all done. I'm working from front to the back, so I'll cut, the cover becomes the frame, and then each subsequent page becomes a frame for each subsequent page. And I'm always seeing what I've already cut. Now and then when I have an isolated image like circles, like the boss lady, I've got to turn the page to avoid cutting her out in order to cut behind it. So there are times when I'm working where I can't see the whole composition. And there have been books that are so complex that I have to close it every 3 seconds just to see the context of the composition.
Some of these books obviously would have had with graphic designers who were involved in the production of the book. Have you ever sent them an image of what?
I've sent one image to, I just tagged him on social media, and he's following me now. He's, one of my books was called, the original was called Secrets of Still Life Photography. So that author is following me because of what I did to his book. And I changed that book to Secrets of Life. You know, I just removed a bunch of the words. I believe that we're out of time. I will be here as long as you want me to. I don't want to keep anyone over time. You have been a great crowd. I'm here. I have some business cards. I have some QR codes if you want to find me. Again, I'm represented down at Brenda McMahon Gallery in Gulfport. My name is Ted Wray, and thank you all for your time.